Welcome, guys, to Mahogany Honey Podcast. Today we have a special topic that we'll be touching on. I have a special guest, Shawnee Palmer, and today's topic we'll be discussing mindset coaching with her. She is a licensed social worker, a mindset coach, and author of Shifting Your Mindset, a guide to overcome depression, anxiety, and trauma. I'm so excited to have her on here. And pretty much today, I'm so excited to get into how we can explore what shifting your mindset takes through a detailed storytelling journey into her path. I also can't wait to hear your self evolution of going from social worker to a mindset coach and also being an author, and hopefully having the readers and listeners um, provide them with tools how to overcome mental and emotional barriers so they can find holistic wellness. So take it away, Shawnee. It's all yours.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here today and to just be able to share some information. I know that it'll be of value to your audience when it comes to emotional and mental wellness. I feel like everybody can benefit from learning of ways to enhance themselves. So I do those three things that you mentioned earlier, and it's been a joy to have those part of my life journey. I feel like I've been a coach to some capacity since I was a young girl. And the reason why I say that is because I've just always been that I'm the oldest of five kids, and I've always been that person, like that friend, that family member that everybody would go to sort out their problems. And I was always the person that sat back and observed everything, and I didn't
Mm.
need to experience doing the things. So I sat back, I was very quiet and shy, but I was collecting data, and I had no idea this is what I was doing until I became an adult. And I recognized the value of me doing that, learning to sit, observe, and take in things so that way I can decide, what's going to work best for me. And I don't think a lot of people do that. I think they just hear information, they try it, it fails, but they don't take time out to really explore those things. So that's where the
Mm.
mindset piece came into place. It's like, hmm, the way that I'm viewing things, the way I'm perceiving them plays a major role in whether or not if I'm going to succeed or fail. But it also allows me to be able to learn who I am in a personal and a professional aspect. So I think those things are very, very, very important, especially with the line of work that I do, teaching other people to do the same thing. Because
Yes.
as you know, like, mental health is one of those things that's very touchy. It's difficult, and when people can learn more ways to like enhance themselves in some capacity and sit back and make observations, they learn more about themselves, they teach other people about themselves, and then they're able to kind of formulate healthier relationships with people.
Absolutely. So, what led you you know, into this field, or what led you into this path?
Hmm. Yeah. So I would say that the background that I had, the upbringing, brought me to a place of wanting to help other people. I experienced a lot of childhood adversities, this generational dysfunction, just a lot of unhealthy habits that I saw. And I wanted to make a contribution to the world in some ways because I wasn't able to reach my family the way that I wanted to. And I'm that type
Mm.
of person who's a helper, and I was helping my family. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And all I could see was like repetitive behaviors. And I'm just like, well, I don't know what you want me to do. Like, I'm making changes within myself. Like, I need to know that I need to make changes in my life and make those changes. And that was just always my thought process. It's like, I don't have to be like this forever. If I'm struggling with something, it just means that I'm missing information. I just don't understand what it is that I need to do. But I'm also that type of person that's like, well, let me go out and find it. And working with other people and having people in my family who just did not do that, that just took a toll on me. So it was just like, it made me want to go even harder for myself. So stepping into this line of work, it was like, okay, well, I found a blueprint for me. I can help other people find a blueprint for themselves. And, I can help people in a different way. It may not be my family, but it could be people who, look like my family.
Absolutely. One of the things that I've noticed within the field, and also had worked in it previously from a social work aspect, but not so much in depth how you have, is that at times, like, a lot of people forget that therapists also have a story. They also have
Mm-hmm.
their own story. And that they also have some challenges, because we're all human, of our own, that pretty much we have confronted and we pretty much have had to face. And so I think that this is like why it's so important to bring this to the forefront, because we also bring a little bit more humanity to the therapists and the people who sit in trying to do healing work.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, I feel like how can you truly work with clients if you can't relate to them in any way outside of just being a human being? It's like, no, you have to dive deep and empathize with them in some capacity to truly find out what's going to work best for them.
Absolutely. So, what has been your relationship with wellness and just the overall societal culture that we're pretty much in right now?
Hmm. Yeah, so I grew up in a family. They didn't work out. They didn't eat healthy. They would do diets off and on, but it wouldn't be part of the lifestyle. It would be, oh well, the doctor told me I have this health issue, so let me go ahead and make this change. But 9 times out of 10, it's driven by somebody else outside of you, and when it's driven by other people, you're not going to be able to succeed with whatever that thing that you're doing along your life journey. So it just health and wellness wasn't something that was really popular in my family. Like people didn't take note of it and say, oh well, let me eat healthier, let me not drink as much, let me not intake and partake into these drugs. So I'm growing up around all of this. I'm growing up around a lot of violence, so it was just like, what was healthy? I say the one thing that was healthy is that family members were loyal to each other. And I felt like, okay, loyalty isn't everything. Like you need
Mm-hmm.
more to sustain in life. So me personally, I've been that person. Like even for education, I valued education because I'm like, education is helping me get somewhere further in life than where I've been. And being complacent with things has never been my thing. I've always been like, well, what's next? What's next? What's next? I'm always at what's next. I, just really changed my life when I became plant based 5.5 years ago.
Ooh,
Yes.
you gotta tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So it's been really amazing. Oh goodness, where did it even start from? I feel like I've always been meant to be vegetarian, plant based in general. From a young age, I would try to stop eating meat, but it was always around me. So I'd be like, okay, I'm not gonna eat any meat, and I'll go like a week and just eat the sides. And I think I would fail. But I did that so many times that as an adult, I finally did it again. And I didn't do too well. I was just eating rice one summer and I was like, I don't like this. I'm going to go back to eating meat. And it literally took me 5 months in between that time where I went back to eating meat and I started reading and doing research because I was like, I have to master this thing. And that's always been my thing. Like, something's missing within me and I don't know what I'm doing because I've never done it before. So I have to go explore. And I just started watching a lot of Dr. Sebi documentaries, purchasing books, and I started following all types of people who were talking about holistic wellness and plant-based eating. And then I started trying all of their recipes. And I was having so much fun in the kitchen. I was like, okay, let's try this, let's try this. This was my thing. Like after work, I worked a regular 9 to 5. After work, I'm trying recipes, I'm studying, I'm reading. And that became a norm for me. And once I did, I didn't stop. I went from vegetarian, I did pescatarian, vegetarian, then I did like alkaline vegan 80% of the time. And then I was like, oh, I'm full blown alkaline vegan. And then I transitioned just to plant based because I like certain foods. So just had to find a happy medium for myself. And I love it. It's helped me so much on this journey.
Awesome. So, what were some of the challenges that you would say you faced in your own, trajectory, when you're trying to shift your mindset? Like, what are some of the challenges that a just any individual you see often, or you saw even, yourself, that you came across?
Yeah. So I would say that the top 5 things, one would be self doubt. A
Okay.
lot of people, because you're pulling away from yourself, who you feel like is your true self, but is not your true self. It's a version of yourself, but it's like it's expired. So individuals have that self-doubt about the decisions that they want to make when it comes to, being intentional about being more open-minded. Another thing I would say is overthinking is a big challenge. Like people will think, oh, well, I should do this, and that's how powerful the mind is. It can give us ideas of what we need to do and what we should be focusing on. But because of our life experiences, it will have us thinking like, this doesn't sound right. And that's the key. It's not supposed to sound right. It's supposed to sound new and unfamiliar, and it's there for you to explore it. So when people do a lot of overthinking, it just causes them to like shut down,
Mm,
um, which also causes them to isolate themselves in some capacity. I see that a whole lot.
that's me.
Right? Yeah. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
you know what? I'm just gonna be by myself because it's too much to handle. And then, but it creates this barrier sometimes if you do it too much because everything has to be done in moderation. So with that being there, you lose out on some components that you could be building for yourself. Even those thoughts that pop through your mind, you lose a lot of friendships.
Um, okay, let's dive a little deep on that one because
Yeah.
I that's a pattern I've also seen socially.
Hmm.
We call it ghosting now.
Yes.
Yeah.
True.
Ghosting is I'm not sure if it's a millennial thing or just
Hmm.
our generation. Um, However, it's become a thing where a person you check on them just to do like, hey, I haven't heard from you in a long time, and they're like, yeah, I'm okay. Um, and so it's always like also difficult because you're trying to straddle the line of like boundaries, right? You're almost like,
Hmm.
How much do I give this person? Like, how much space do I get? Like, and then as a friend, it's almost like you feel like you're not family, but at the same time, like you're also concerned, but you just like don't know. And then you start internalizing it and you're almost like, should I take this personal? Is this about me or not? And then you have people on the outside being like, no, it's not necessarily you. But how do you cope with ghosting?
Yeah. I would say the number one thing is to not take it personal. And I say don't take it personal because everybody, has their own life journey, and it may not be something that you've done to cause that reaction. But either way it goes, even if it was something that you've done, it's still not a personal situation for you to take because that person took it the way that they did and they felt that that was the best reaction for them with the situation.
So let me get a little bit on the other side of things, just to challenge, because, we have all types of listeners. So, what would you say to the, cutting people off culture of like, hey, this person's not vibing with me, and I you know, probably just better off cutting them off and like going about my life. What do you say to that? Is that
Yeah.
also in the context of ghosting, or is that something else? Like, how do I feel like they go hand in hand? Are they different? How do you?
Yeah. I think people who just ghost, I think that there's a lot of emotional pain there and a lot of issues with abandonment typically are created with abandonment depending on the situation. We could go dive deeper. It depends on the person. A person's intentions may be, okay, this person is going to be in my life for a short period of time, but they may not communicate that, so then that's when the ghosting occurs. But at the end
Mm,
of the day, it's still not to be taken personal because that's who that person is. They're showing you that they're not capable or they're not really truly there to be in your life for the long run or to add value to your life. It shows that they're coming into your life to take away from it in some capacity because they may not be in a space in their lives where they can add value to your life. So don't get emotionally attached to it.
or in a space where they probably can communicate it verbally,
Mm-hmm.
that because they're probably trying to process things themselves, and they may not be in a space where they can even tell you, or they don't even know whether they're cutting you off or if they're not, or like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there's
Yeah.
a lot there. And I feel like it's important because it does play into the mental health of
Yeah.
today's society, of depression and anxiety and trauma. And so how would you define these things?
Yes. Yes. So I define depression specifically as past things, past worries, and past experiences that are creeping into the present and interfering. So causing a distraction. And that distraction is real because those things actually happen. But a distraction is destructive. It's destructive to your emotional and mental well-being in the moment. And anxiety is, focusing on future concerns and like how the future is going to lay out in any capacity. It could be what the future is going to look like in 5 years, 10 years, tomorrow. Just all of those things are considered to be the future. And sometimes it can be very intense depending on what the situation is. And trauma, I feel like it's just a significant life experience has happened that has caused some type of turmoil. Some individuals are very resilient to things and they'll say, oh, that's not trauma, that's normal. But it's all about what everybody feels that they're experiencing in the moment. And neither one of those are, I'm not speaking of the clinical terms of the depression or anxiety because that looks a little bit deeper. But when you just look at the body feeling depressed, it's at a low state. When you're anxious, like everything feels so intense and high. So it's like either too much or not enough of something with depression and anxiety. And then trauma can cause those depression, anxiety things to show up in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I I want to say that I right now I feel for everyone who may be, going through these things or may have like had a previous experience with this, because I've had
Mhm.
also know what it's what those things are. Unfortunately, I've like probably at some point in our, or maybe in our lives in general, like have gone through these things and probably not realized it. Because that's a thing too. Like
Yeah.
you probably were depressed or were anxious or probably have trauma in your life, but haven't given yourself a chance to explore um that maybe, hey, yeah, I probably have been depressed, or maybe I have been anxious or trauma. Because at times for people, they hear these terms and they're like, yeah, I don't know if I really relate to that. Because they, when some people's understanding of mental health, it like in order for you to seek assistance or to seek help in these things, it has to come to a point where it's just extreme, right? And not
Mm-hmm.
know that you actually may be living in it or experiencing it right now. Um, and so that's why like I always like to elaborate a little bit on there on as to that. I'm not sure if you can maybe or have an experience where you've probably dealt with either one of those things.
Yeah, yeah. So if I look back at my earliest age of depression, I know that early teens is when it really hit hard for me. Um, just in a very low space. Dealt with some bullying, but also dealt with a lot of family issues. By the age of 12, I'd seen so much, and I think that my soul was tired. So just keeping to myself, I isolated myself, stayed in my room, just wasn't very sociable, and I cried a lot. I cried a whole lot. And I also had experienced grief for the second time from a close loved one at that time. And it was just like everything came rushing all at once. And I just had a lot of responsibilities as a 12-year-old. So I would say I've battled with it since then. And I did not recognize it until I became a mental health professional myself when I started diving deeper into my life journey. So but I got through it because I was younger. Kids are typically more resilient, and I had my siblings to look after, and they helped keep me going. Them and music helped keep me going, and then I have some
Music.
adults that were around in some capacity that kept me going.
Absolutely. I definitely can relate to you with the music part.
Hmm.
Man, yeah. I'm like, if it wasn't for music sometimes, like it really can carry you. It can carry you.
Oh yeah. And I was the I needed to listen to classical music while I slept type of person. I always had the radio on. I had my CDs. That's one thing I did not play about growing up. I was like, okay, I need all of the latest CDs. I had all of my posters on the wall of all of my favorite people. I had my stuffed animals, and my room was my sanctuary. So when I looked around it, that's why I stayed in it. It's like, oh, I love it here. I've
Safe
created
space.
this ambiance and it feels great to me.
My safe space. I created my safe
Mm-hmm.
space. That's so
Yes.
important to create your safe space too. A lot of people don't think of that, you know. At times you only think about it when you're a teenager, but it
Mm-hmm.
follows through as an adult as well. Like to create your own safe space in your household, like your own space that you can go to and be like, okay, this is like my drink my tea, light up an incense, listen to a podcast, and just
Yes.
like go into my realm, you know? Um, Especially in challenging times where we're a little bit limited when it comes to traveling, because it's so easy in the past to kind of just like get up and go, you know, and not really have to sit with yourself. But right now we're a little bit forced to kind of just like deal with it where we are.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. And so what is this like tied into what led you to write the book? Tell us a little bit more.
Yes, yes. So writing the book, so I've always loved to write. So I in the fourth grade, I won this Young Authors Award where I wrote about dinosaurs. And I don't have the book, but I remember it very vividly like it was yesterday. And I wrote about dinosaurs, the Stegosaurus specifically. It was my favorite one. And I don't even remember what the storyline was about, but I remember drawing the images, and I'm not an artist like that. But I had a book and I won out of the entire fourth grade. And that was something that was very big for me. Like I remember being in the little auditorium and them calling my name out and me going up there and getting my award, which I do still have that. And so I've always written. And as an adult, I was stuck. Like I couldn't get back into a lot of the things that I did as a child because, working, being a mother, like you just in school, you just get wrapped up into all of these new things as an adult that you don't get a chance to embark on the things that you did in your youth.
Yeah.
So I would just try to write. And, I was like, oh, I want to do something for some girls. I want to do something for teen girls. I want to do something for teen boys because there's information I could pull from within my family, right? And then with the internet, because that's, the internet was popular and I could pull information years ago. And I started this years ago. So I just started collecting data about different challenges that people have faced in life. And I was like, oh, I'm going to put some stuff together because I experienced these same things. And while doing that, I discovered a lot of my own hurt and pain. And it was so difficult to write because there were things that were popping up that I hadn't thought of before. So I was like, oh, I definitely need to keep writing this book because there's something there. Because I'm that type of person like, oh, why am I feeling this way? I need to explore this a little bit more. So writing my book, it was like, oh, this is healing. This makes me feel good. So as I went through each significant area of my life with the breakdown of the book, I was like, oh, this makes me feel better. This makes me feel better now. Even though initially I'd be like, no, I really don't want to do this. It doesn't feel good. I'm hurting right now. I'm crying. But I was like, oh, afterwards, oh, that wasn't bad. Let's keep going. So that's what led me to writing my book, to just so that I could share my story and heal myself.
Is there a special section in your book? Can we see the book really quick? Um,
Yes,
Show us the book.
this is the
So
book.
that's the book, everyone. Is there a special section in the book or just a little path that you can read to us that like you really liked, or just like a section or a chapter that
Oh
kept
my,
you're like, there's so
yeah.
many. I love all of them.
Yes. So I'm gonna read chapter 10 on abandonment.
Okay.
And the reason why is because when I read this one, even after my book was finished, I was just like, oh my gosh, you still have to work on this.
Okay.
It was really hard, and then to publicly talk about this bothered me, even more.
Yeah.
So just read how much you want me to read.
Go
Just how
on,
much
girl.
ever. Okay. All right. So, chapter 10, abandonment. This topic hits close to home on so many levels. As I mentioned in the previous chapter, my mother was a sole authority figure in my household growing up, leaving me to take care of my younger siblings. This was because of the tumultuous relationship between my mother and father. My father did not live in the home. However, as a child, he would often try to be an active participant in my life. However, when I was 12, my father randomly moved out of the state. He didn't tell us and instead, we found out by chance. I later learned that he was battling with his own challenges that he'd never discussed with us. But even when he was around, I felt detached from him. He came and went whenever he wanted to, never being there when I needed him. His leaving completed my detachment, yet his abandonment also impacted the relationships that I would have later in my life. So that's a little sneak peek into the
Wow.
abandonment.
Guys, if you listen, if that was enough for me to go get it. I'm like, I need to know more.
Yes,
I need to
yes.
know more. It's so interesting because um this is about you and I definitely don't want to take away, but it just little things like that definitely make me resonate and be like, yeah, you connect with certain people for reasons.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I'm gonna leave it at.
Yes.
Um, so with your book written and just your overall wellness center, I want to know what project and achievement are you most proud of at this point with everything you've done so far?
Yes. So my biggest one is my new baby and is my nonprofit. I'm the founder of Kindred Youth Foundation.
Say it again with your
Um,
chest. We
yes.
it's something to be proud of.
Yes, I'm proud of Kindred Youth Foundation, a
Yes.
nonprofit I just founded. It's just my baby, and we're just in the works with gathering everything. But I have a full vision mapped out for it, and I'm excited for how it's going to be implemented. So 2021 is all about implementing all of those things within the nonprofit, and the mission is to provide a healthy, strong mental and emotional wellness foundation for a youth ages 13 to 18 who have experienced growing up with a parent or a caregiver who has had a substance abuse issue and is in recovery. So I'm excited to be able to like bridge the gap so that way they can reunify with their parents or caregivers, and really be able to prepare them for adulthood when it comes to like relationships, managing their emotions, and just learning ways to prevent themselves from also embarking on those things that has led their parents and caregivers into recovery.
That's awesome and unique.
Mhm.
You hear about a lot of nonprofits, and at times they're very similar in certain things, but there's always something that stands out in the mission, which I appreciate that
Mhm.
you brought forward. Uh, cannot wait because I chose this specifically because I know it's one of the topics that you are like highly able to discuss, and it's the art of setting healthy boundaries. I can't get enough of
Mhm.
boundaries. Like I love like that is just one of my. So tell us what is your art form?
Yes. So the reason why I call it the art of setting boundaries is because I had no boundaries. I was not taught boundaries. So I had to teach myself boundaries. So I know all about what it's like to not have boundaries in place and what life looks like, and how you feel like a victim when those boundaries aren't there if you feel like you're a good person. But,
Mhm.
it's like at some point you have to take the wheel of your life and enhance it in some capacity and take yourself from victimhood to victorious. So that's what I'm all about because I got myself there and I'm like,
Okay.
gotta help everybody else get there as well, right? So it's all about really mastering ways to have a healthier life. That's all it's about. It's all about like having a good emotional balance. We're humans. We're going to have emotions. We're going to be happy. We're going to be upset. We can be triggered easily, but we can't allow those things to impact us so greatly that we're falling off and we're forgetting who we are. So when you set boundaries, you really connect with your authentic self. You're really walking in the space of being unapologetic, because you're setting guidelines for your life. You know how we have guidelines when we go to work. There's policies and procedures that we have to follow. I mean, just being in this world, we have the government laws and policies that we have to follow. And think about between work, the government, and all of these other policies. If you have children, their school has them, you have to follow them. They're just things that we have to follow day in and day out. And we were taught to do those things from a very young age. But, we get so wrapped up in focusing on everybody else's stuff that we forget that we have to create our own. Like those things are set there as an example for what we could be doing for ourselves.
Mm.
So I think saying no is like my favorite boundary. It's my favorite because if you say no, like the power of no, it's not using a lot of energy. It doesn't take a lot of time. It's just very simple. If a person asks you, can you do something? What they're asking is for a yes or no answer, right? But as people, when you don't have boundaries that are put into place, you're thinking of all of these other things, adding it into the mix, which is causing possible depression, anxiety, causing you to isolate or shut down, causing you to do something that you truly don't want to do. But if you were to just say yes, if you say no, it takes the middleman of all of those thoughts out of the equation, and it keeps things very clear and crisp. And the more you say no to things that you truly don't want to do, the easier it is, and the easier it is for you to keep doing that, but also the less people actually come to you with those types of things. And then also when it comes to setting boundaries, you stop doing things that make you uncomfortable. I know in life we have to do some things that are, uncomfortable. Like, for example, in school, everybody has had to give some type of speech before. Very uncomfortable, standing up front of class, reciting something possibly, or you have your little note card. That's uncomfortable, but that's something bearable because everybody's doing it at that time. So that's a different type of uncomfortable. But when a person calls you up and you've been working all day and you're really tired and drained, and they say, hey, let's go out tonight. And that's your opportunity to really check in with yourself. If you don't feel good, then that should warrant a no. But a lot of people put themselves in uncomfortable positions where they're going to go ahead and hang out with their friends because they don't want to disappoint them, maybe. And then you're in the environment not enjoying it the way that you should be enjoying it. You're not really getting your social cup filled. It's like you're deflated at that point, and you probably want to run and hide. So it's just setting a boundary to say, if I'm tired, and this is an internal boundary that you set with yourself too. You don't just set boundaries with other people. You do it with yourself. You tell yourself, hey, if I'm tired, I'm not really capable of showing up and being my best self, but also I'm not going to be able to receive what's being given to me in those environments. So I have to say no to it, because when you do that, you honor yourself.
Absolutely. And would you say that at times it could be challenging because it means that you have to take accountability and control over your life?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes people don't want to be looked at like, oh, I get to make this decision. Other people are making this decision for me. And those are typical people who always have like that victimhood mentality for things because they haven't had a lot of control in their lives to some capacity.
Wow.
So it's not like their fault that they're, have that, but it is at the same time because they're so used to not having control that they don't know exactly, hey, that having control is a positive thing, and you should learn how to implement that so you can, move away from the victimhood mentality with things.
Right. And realize how powerful you probably really are and how much of
Mm-hmm.
it you've been giving away.
Yep. Yep. Because people are always going to expect things out of you unless you tell them otherwise. So if you're that type of person, like you're always ready to go, 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 and you say yes, yes, yes to everything, and even if you do this to one person, they are just going to naturally just ask you to do things with them because you always say yes. But they may naturally just want you around them, which is nothing wrong with that. But you're still not obligated to go and follow through with what they want you to do just because they want you around, you know? And also, if you tell them no, it doesn't mean that they're not going to want you around. But typically, people will think, oh, well, if I tell them no, they won't like me or they'll have an attitude towards me. Whatever ideas people can create in their minds about it, it's like if you say no, you don't have to go to that. People are going to respect your no's. They're going to say, okay, that's fine,
Yeah.
because this isn't a life or death situation. If it's a life or death situation, people may not be able to accept no's. But if you know that it's not and that they're an adult, which most of the time people are adults and they can take care of themselves, and you shouldn't be responsible for another adult,
That part.
um, right? Unless there's a legal obligation. But people just feel so obligated because they have these roles and these attachments towards people. And it's like, hey, that role and attachment, you have to kind of look at that, your perspective on that, because if it's weighing you down, like those expectations that you have of this relationship that you have with this person, you need to reevaluate it so you can actually get to a space of feeling peace, feeling like you can set these boundaries and move forward with them instead of trying to move forward with fear in everything that you do with that person. Because that's honestly where that's coming from. It's like a place of fear when you're not able to tell a person no.
Yeah, and I feel like at times it could be challenging or scary for some people because deep down they may know that things may change.
Hmm. Yes, the change, right? Humans don't like change. They don't like change. And you said something earlier, like with people, the ghosting culture, or people just recognizing, hey, I don't, we're not a good fit for each other. And this is another thing. It's like the boundary may be, okay, I've outgrown who you are or who I was before. So now we no longer mesh well with each other. And I have to say no to this friendship. I have to say no to this relationship. I have to say no to this job because it doesn't fit well for who I am today. And when you can say no, you really take ownership of the growth that you've, been intentional about. Like if I'm growing, I can't be apologetic about, my growth. I can't help that, I'm doing better than what I was before when we met each other, and you want me to stay stuck. That stunts your growth. So everybody has to do each other a favor and set those boundaries so that way each person can move forward in their lives and progress in whatever ways that's going to look like. Because typically both parties are progressing, whether they meet new people in their lives that are aligned with them, teaching them new things, gaining new experiences with them. It's like, why does everybody have to go to like the worst case scenario?
Right. I used to say that in regards to like breakups. I used to be like, why do they have to uh be so difficult? Why is it that it always has to end in a dramatic manner or etc. And it's like at times it doesn't always have to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have found it to get to that place, because you always try to prevent I feel like because that change might happen and you're gonna have to take accountability and all the things that it takes when you actually start doing your boundaries, you're doing your
Mm-hmm.
boundary work. um so I used to always be like, why does it have to be this way, or like try to prevent it from getting to that level. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
at times it's inedible, how can I say, inevitable. Yes, inevitable for it to end up being dramatic, and at times it doesn't always have to be that way. And I want to speak on behalf of the people that, just from personal experience, where it has led to it being dramatic, and you um have tried the most that you can for it not to get to that level, but however you do not have a, like a responsibility over how someone else reacts or takes your no. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's very important, or how they pretty much handle rejection, because at times it could be difficult to want to put off your needs because
Mm-hmm.
of the way that you may fear that someone may take your no, or your rejection overall.
Mm-hmm.
um So yeah, that part. I definitely
Mm-hmm.
think that I want like to give a little bit of support to my listeners on that end. And the guilt part that comes with it too, of
Yep.
like feeling guilty because this person might have like taken it a certain way, or you tried to, we may assert your boundary in a certain manner because at times like you may not have the best way to, or know because you haven't practiced it in so long of how to like set a boundary, that at times when it comes out it might not come out the best way. I also tell those people that may have like gone down that path, um it's not always pretty. You're not always gonna, it's not always gonna come out the right way. However, advocating for yourself is always something to embrace and something
Mm-hmm.
to um, be proud of, that you're finally like standing up for yourself and actually having your back. Um, so that's why we have you here, so you can show us and teach us and tell us how to put it into practice, so that way we don't have to deal, with like the guilt part of it. Well, we're
Mm-hmm.
always gonna have to deal with it, but just like know how to manage that a little bit better and just be aware of that, or just the responsibility of like other people's reaction to your boundaries. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And, I feel like when people are able to have those internal conversations with themselves before reacting to other people, which is what I would say is, how we have conversations within our mind. We're like, oh, well, we're going to say this to this person. But then we also are like, oh, well, this is how the person is going to react. And it's like, no, just think for yourself. Don't think for the other person within a situation, because that gets you crossed up, and it keeps you in a space of feeling that rejection even more intensely, feeling that guilt even more. And if you can reduce it in any way possible, that's going to be the best, because, like you said, that guilt is going to happen. You're going to feel that rejection, and nothing is wrong with that. But you have to be able to take care of yourself in that moment, and just know that what you said when you set that boundary was necessary for your life. So when you set boundaries, I always tell people, like, really know exactly what works for you in this life and what doesn't work, and make them non-negotiables. Make them non-negotiables, because this is how you honor yourself. This is how you stay connected with who you are and your well-being. Everybody has to protect themselves in some way. And the typical protection people have is, oh, I'm just going to put this wall up and I'm not going to let anybody in. And it's like, no, that's an unhealthy, that's really a toxic way of doing things. Even like with ghosting, very toxic, where, you can have a conversation with the person and say, hey, this isn't working for me. And you don't have to explain any further after that. As long as you can find solace within who you are, getting really solid within, okay, these are my likes, these are my dislikes. For example, this is a silly one, but if you are really irritable with somebody smacking gum, you're going to be irritable, and that may need to be a non-negotiable with the friend. But even if it's a non-negotiable, it's something that you can have a healthy conversation about. Like, hey, this is something that is really irritating to me. Like, it irritates me more than anybody else. And I want to maintain this friendship. So where can you meet me at with this? Because they may not even know that they're doing it the way that they're doing it, because they may have just always done it that way, and other people have been around them who have not said anything.
hmm.
So you still set that boundary when you have that conversation, instead of saying, no, I don't want to be around you. And in the back of your mind, it's because they smack gum, and you don't like it and it's irritating to you. Or you decide, oh, I'm just going to ghost you because I don't like this one thing about you. So it's like, boundaries help you set healthier relationships with people. It helps you have a healthier way of thinking. It allows you to stay open-minded to the possibilities that, hey, things can work out just fine. Actually, you know what? They're going to be greater than what they are right now if I set this boundary with this person. So it helps you change your perspective on it in general, with different relationships and different people that you interact with, even if it's just your bank teller.
And it also helps reduce codependencies, which
Ah,
that's a whole nother.
yes, that's a 4 hour topic.
Yeah, that's a future, but they go together hand in hand.
Yes, yes, yes.
They're in the family.
Right.
So to dive a little deeper into this, just to give the listeners an idea, of what may look like in our daily lives. For me, like it's challenging. Um, Boundaries have been challenging for me, and mostly with my family and with friendships. That's the area
Mm-hmm.
where I've predominantly have seen that. Like, I'm like, God, I know you testing me. I know you. I know this is a test. And it's I I've had so many times where I wanted to like honestly give up because it is just very hard at times, especially with people that you've been, it feels like, enmeshed with, because that's like what happens at times with families. Um and maybe you can share with us an example of where it's been the hardest for you and just like navigate it and how you've, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say the most difficult part of setting the boundaries when it came to finances with family. Um, I'm a big giver. I love to give. And if I could give you my last to make you happy and to help you so that way you're not struggling, I'm that person. But then I started recognizing it was like, oh, well, I actually gave and I didn't actually have that to give. And we had a discussion about you returning that back to me so that way my needs can still be met and I can pay my bills. And when that wasn't returned, after several different episodes of that happening with different family members, I said, you know what? Okay, I have to say no because I'm looked at as that person as being very responsible, budgeting myself, doesn't mean that people have to basically take advantage of me because at this point, that's what's happening. So when I started to say no, relationship dynamics started to change. And it was hard too. I was like, I gotta tell people no that I love, that I've always been there for. And it felt so cringy. Like the feeling of saying no did not sit well with me, but I knew that it didn't sit well with me because I needed to do it. You know how our body reacts to things, and I can't even explain what that feeling is when you have to do something that you truly don't want to do. It's like you want to go back into your shell and hide.
Mm,
So when I started to do that, I allowed myself to lose aspects of what the relationships looked like
yeah.
in order to gain me, more of me, more solace,
Mm,
being able to just be able to be more authentic within who I am, because even though I may have wanted to say no all of those other times, I was always saying yes.
mm,
So I was able to just be my real self. And being my real self, it was just like, okay, I can go to sleep at night and not worry about this. And even though I may have battled when I first started saying no within my mind, I always revert back to, why did you say no? Because it was the right thing. So you're going to have conversations with yourself and be okay with those challenges. So that way, like, you can get yourself in the right mind, to, like, really push the limits of what, you felt like you were limited on, previously before. So when I did that, lost aspects of the relationships, that was okay. We didn't communicate a lot, pulled back, but everybody lived. Nobody died.
nobody died.
Nobody, hit a roadblock in their lives. People were able to figure it out. So now all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, I don't have to be the answer to everybody's solution. Like, I don't have to be whatever it is that they have having a problem with. I don't have to be the answer to that always. And they're actually figuring it out. So that means that I didn't need to be in the equation to begin with. I
Mm,
was just that one who was just like, pick me, choose me type of mentality, which is definitely not healthy. But I know that that derived from my issues with abandonment and rejection
mm.
from my childhood, right?
Look, look how it all ties back.
Full circle.
Full circle, full circle.
Yes.
This feels so good. It really does. I really do enjoy this. Like, people, I'm not. It's not. I really thoroughly. I feel I learn. I feel like I when I do this, it's like you think you know it all, and you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's always a different level, a different depth, a different area, and it's just like just navigating it with you. I want to just like take the time aside to just like thank you again. We're not,
Yes.
I'm like, we're not done yet. But I like to like when I feel it to genuinely just say it in the moment when I feel it. Um and so going on, pandemic and all, that 2021 still, quarantining. What are some new boundaries we are confronting now with this pandemic?
Oh, yes. I would say a safety boundary because a lot of people are having to change up the way that they do things to maintain their health and well being. And now people are more likely to give a no about those things that could be harmful to the health. And it's good that people are doing that. They're exercising their right to do it. Unfortunately, it may have taken a pandemic to happen and to see those statistical numbers on the TV and reading them online to be able to say, you know what, I'm actually not going to do that because people are actually putting themselves in danger, mental danger, emotional danger, all of the time when they're not setting those boundaries. So to say, hey, my physical health is not going to be put at risk, which is a good thing. And people are also, finding time to sit with themselves and be by themselves. And I think that that's great. Like there's been more self-care. And I think that that has been a really good boundary that people put in a place where they said, hey, I am going to take care of myself a little bit more. And I'm going to spend more time with myself doing that. So I can talk to you later. So I think that because of how the world is going through this pandemic and how it has been really difficult for everything that's come out of it with all of the new policies and procedures that have to be put into place, like all of these sudden changes taking place, people have to adjust to those things. So I say the best boundary to put in for yourself is to say, hey, I'm going to be more intentional about the routines that I embark on in my self-care and plugging it into my schedule on a daily basis too, to be able to cope with all of these changes that are taking place.
Wow. Um, yeah, I felt like I noticed about like the boundary conversation coming about for me, and just arising in my life when it came to work.
Mm,
And I was being asked to come into the office. Um, and I want to say it was like the end of May, or not even the end of May. It was like the conversation was being had like mid May,
mm,
and that was still when it was like first like coming about, and still we were all trying to learn how to maneuver it and just like adjust to like, I mean, that was like when everything shut down, still like everything was still shut down, and there was just like a lot of anxiety. And so for me it was just like my mental health and my health, there was just a lot of questions that came about when I was like asked to come back into like a space where I probably will be around a lot of people.
mm,
Um, and so, what would you recommend or advise someone who's in that predicament of like setting
yeah,
boundaries with their employer?
yeah. I would definitely, kind of look at incorporate law and what's going on in the world into the conversation with them. Um, because, if statistics are showing that the work that you can do at home are of quality, of the same quality or better quality than actually being in the space, I would also recommend that you bring that to their attention because you being in an emotional, fearful state in the work environment is not going to help the quality of work that you produce. So
Make
I think having that conversation is very, very, very important because they're thinking very logically like, oh, if people are here, we can make sure that we have eyes on them. We can make sure that we can respond to their problems more quickly, but they're not thinking about, oh, well, how are they actually adjusting to the pandemic? How do they feel about this? Because everybody has different feelings about it. Some people are very, very fearful, where it's like it may be at a level of paranoia, but it doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means that they need more support so that way they don't have to continue to experience that paranoia at that level that they may be. So you don't want to trigger a person by saying, hey, let's come back on into the work environment because it's time for us to do this. And we're not being saying that we can't do this. It's like, no, be able to meet that person where they're at and learn and understand where they're coming from. So if your employer isn't doing that for you, go ahead and teach them, hey, this is what's going on with me right now. This is how I feel about coming back in, because they may not have the capacity to think that way because they're business minded. So you have to approach them business minded as well. I'm very serious and business about my life, about my
Hey,
health and well being. So you have to match their energy.
man.
hmm
Wow.
And that's a boundary that has to be set, because it's either um, they decide to accept you, or you're going to have to find a way to remove yourself from that environment if they're not able to respect you, because you have that option. Nobody is tied down to one position, and this may just be your calling to start moving forward if that job isn't willing to meet you somewhere where you can feel sane about work. So that's always, it has to be considered, like, hey, is this no longer a fit for me? And if this is no longer a fit for me, then what do I need to do? What proper steps do I need to take for myself, so that way I can work through this and make the best decision for myself, versus, oh no, I have to sit here and stay with this job. They're not allowing me to do this. They're not doing that. Hey, that's where that victim mind comes into place. Like, nope, you're not the victim. You're victorious. So how am I going to master this situation? What is going to be the best case scenario for me? What do I need to do for me, instead of what do I need to conform to for my employer?
Man, where were you 5 months ago? It's okay. You're here now. You're here now. You're here now.
Yes, yes.
You are here now. Well, I've taken away so much. I wanted to know, what are some steps that you can, you know, like provide to us for
Mhm.
holistic health? What would be some takeaways?
Yes. So for holistic health, I say look at every single aspect of your life: your physical, mental, emotional, social, intellectual, like everything that you could think of, like even your finances. Identify the, the, the natural ways of doing things and learn about them. Your intuition is going to know what's best as far as the areas that you need to start working in. You know exactly what your number one problems are. All humans do, because we're always talking to ourselves about it. We're sometimes beating ourselves up about it, but we are reminding ourselves about these problems that we have that we need to change, but we're typically stuck on how to make those changes. So I feel like understanding, like using your intuition to identify what area that you want to work on within yourself first is very important. Research the holistic methods of those things. Find out what steps you want to take towards it and actually put it to action and try it out. Be okay with trying it. That's where you get the experience to say, hey, this works for me. This doesn't. I'm going to go ahead and do away with it. So you have to be patient with yourself on this process. For, anxiety, I may tell people, hey, drink some lavender tea, drink some chamomile tea, but that doesn't work for everybody. So people have to be willing to try other methods to see what's going to be good for them, because it may just be, hey, you need these three combination of things versus this other person needs this one thing. So just don't attach yourself to following one method of doing things. Be open-minded and learning and willing to grow.
Definitely. Absolutely. And just a quick takeaways of, what are some of the signs that we probably do need to start embracing change, or that we may need to start making some changes? What are some signs?
Yes, yes. If you're feeling stagnant and you're feeling like stuck and you feel like, oh, I should be doing something, but I'm not, that's a sign right there. If you're in an uncomfortable space in your life, that means there needs to be a change that's made. If you're too complacent, and because it's everything requires moderation. So if you're too complacent and you've been complacent in quite a bit of time and you haven't had any forward movement because you're like, oh, I'm just comfortable, everything's good, that's an issue. You know, you need to make some changes. It shows that, hey, you know, pick up a new hobby, explore a skill that you have, enhance it in some way, do something out of the norm, because change is always going to happen around you. So the best way for you to manage that change, that sudden change when it happens, it's outside of you, is to start making changes within you, so that way you can normalize change. And I don't think enough people do that. And the most obvious one is, hey, if you're fearful about something, that means that you're just unaware of it. So change needs to take place.
Oh, so good, so good, so good. So, Shawnee, where can we find you? Where can the people find you? What are some of
Yes.
social links and websites and all that good stuff?
Yes, so I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Love and Serenity Wellness, and I am on Instagram more. Post a few times a day, but every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, I'm going live and I'm talking about different emotional and mental wellness topics. This month, well, for February, I'm actually going to be talking about a lot of issues like on abandonment, rejection, and all of those things, because it's Lovers Month. February, you know what the
Tuning
month is
in.
all
I'm
about,
tuning
right?
in, Shawnee. I'm
So
tuning
I want to
in.
talk about those things so everybody can, get out of the feeling of feeling lonely, feeling like they just, they don't fit in. Because you think about the holidays, you're like, oh, I'm supposed to have this, I'm supposed to have that. And sometimes you're not supposed to have those things. You're supposed to just have yourself, and you're supposed to find ways to cope and deal with yourself and be with yourself, and love on yourself, rather than having somebody else love on you throughout that time. And I have personal experiences about that I'm going to talk on those live videos to help people just learn and learn more about the normalcy of it all, feeling lonely, but how you don't have to stay lonely.
Facts. And then any other helpful resources or links you may want to. I know that I'm definitely going to ask you to, I'm going to drop your site if that's okay, and probably put it on my website for additional resources. But anything else or any other resources aside from, of course, picking up her new book that dropped in October of 2020, and
Yes. Yes. So with the Shifting Your Mindset, a guide to overcome depression, anxiety, and trauma, every month I offer a free chapter from the book. So
ooh,
right now you can grab the free chapter on forgiveness if you go to my Instagram page at Love and Serenity Wellness. Click the link in my bio and you get a free chapter. So then that way you can just kind of learn more and dive deep into what I talk about and the exercises that I provide. But I'm also on YouTube as well at Shifting
ooh,
Mindsets with Shawnee. So I have a lot of content out there that may be old, but I do upload weekly content there as well, talking about all of these different subjects. And then I have a private Facebook support group. It's Shifting Your Emotional Mindset, where individuals can join and just get some community support. And it's very structured and but not structured at the same time, where people just come in and just, you can be active or inactive, whatever works for you, just for getting the support that you need. So I like to be of service to people and support them in any way that I can. So those are the avenues in which I have that available.
awesome. We can't thank you enough. Thank you so much, Shawnee, for coming on. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, and go see Shawnee and all those wonderful social links she provided to you, and to listen in and tune in on Mahogany Honey Podcast.